I love it when they deprecate something from the primary API and then let you know that if you want to still continue to use it, you should go use the beta API. It's like, huh? If it's in the beta but you're deprecating it from the production API, why are you deprecating it if you're still planning on keeping it around for the beta?
I don't think Microsoft applies logic to anything. An
well,
example is their renaming and restructuring of their licenses.
I mean, the reality is they're in a whole different universe than us to who they're really selling to.
This meeting is being recorded.
Sorry, guys.
Like,
we can start because somebody requested recording for a bot, I think. So if there's any sensitive information, let me know so I can stop recording.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
All right. So we have, Michelle, we have about 24 in. Give it another minute or two, you think?
Yeah, I think, yeah, some people are still coming in.
Okay, fair enough. Good to see everybody. How are you all today? Chip, wonderful to see you again. Great job on the cyber call this week.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That was fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. For those of you who didn't catch it, we had a great cyber call. In fact, I can post it. And in fact, if I have time today, as I'm multitasking, listening and moderating, there was some great threat reports put out by Rubrik, and then they probably one of the best graphical threat reports, Chip, I think I've ever seen. That really kind of told a story. I'll see if I have it handy for everybody real quick, and I'll just put it in chat. Here it is. How many of you guys can access this? This is the PDF portion of it. And then it references a bunch of other. Can you guys access that as is?
Seems to work, yeah.
Yeah.
Seems to work. Okay. And then I'll put in the Zero Labs rubric, Zero Labs. Zero. Oh, here it is. If you just, this is just so well done. This is the actual HTML of the whole thing. And it's just this incredible narrative. But when you get to, I think it's page 6, they reference threat reports from Palo, Expel, and others, and pull in all of that data. And I think it's one of the best done threat reports out there. And it highlights stuff that really I don't think people have done in as easy to understand way, Chip, from the identity side. Does that make sense?
Was that a question for me?
Yeah, just your thoughts.
Yeah, it does make sense. They make it very accessible, even all the way down to a complete layperson to understand what's going on the IAM side. What I was most blown away by were the stats in there on the, 99% of enterprise CISOs are reporting that, they've been attacked. And, that to me is a crazy high number. I still would love to talk to the author of that report and see how they're identifying the word attack versus compromise.
Yeah, it was almost like incident, but they said like out of these 5,000 companies, I think it was 99% have experienced at least one. The average, and again, realize this is Rubrik, so we're dealing with enterprises across the globe, but it's still fascinating. The average is like 52 or 54 incidents.
Yeah, 54.
54. That's the average. So just to give you a sense of the attack landscape. Oh wait, should we go at it, Michelle? We're 4 after here.
Yeah, I think we should. There are still some people coming in, but they'll catch up.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to kind of share the agenda for today. I'm going to start off with letting Ryan chat a little about Unify and a survey. Michelle will put that up. turn it over to Liran and Amanda. They had a second half of something they wanted to ask and kind of go over with everybody around Microsoft MFA. There's a great article in Wired that Chip shared with me yesterday. I'll put it in chat for everybody. I just love his perspective on it, on the future of password or passwordless, where we're headed. And then I created a tabletop exercise for us. And that means you actually have to get involved, because I don't click next until we actually get information back from you guys. All right, so with that, I'll stop sharing. I'll turn it over first to Ryan, and Ryan, the floor is yours. By the way, just FYI, Mike, you asked about Write a Boom. I did put the link in. It is announced formally. You will see it in there. It's March. Oh, you made a comment already. Sorry, it's in there. So, all right, so now it's over to you, Ryan.
All right, this is be really quick and simple. If you guys didn't get to see the Unify release when we did it either time, I would strongly encourage you to reach out to your account manager, get some info, get the recording. We're trying to make this even better for you folks and leverage your RMM to aggregate data, simplify reporting and alerting, and give you some smarter, more intelligence around the Respond module. To that end, we built a survey. It takes about 2.5 minutes to fill out. And it's really helping us decide what we're going to act on next, where we're going to grow, what we're going to focus on as far as RMM and MSP tools, and understand basically how you guys are using the platform and where we can offer more help to make this a more effective partnership. So if you wouldn't mind taking the time, if you haven't filled it out yet, please do. Somewhere down the road here, probably right about when the Cool Rules Challenge ends as well, we're going to pick one of the respondents and send you guys a Visa gift card for $200. So please fill it out and please be one of those folks that might win.
Oh, Ben didn't win that already?
We weren't gonna tell anybody.
Oh, okay.
Now I can't. Now Ben's not allowed to win. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, sure. By the way, just in chat, does anybody not know about the Unify release? Please don't be shy. I could have Ryan just give you an abridged version overview of it. So can you just put, hey, no, I don't know what Unify is, or I don't know what that release is. Just let us know in chat, and then we can kind of bring everybody up to speed if you don't. So it looks like no one is saying this group, it looks like Ryan and team, everybody knows what Unify is, which is great.
Yeah, man, these are our people. I'm really happy to hear that. That's good. And now I need you guys to use it.
Yeah, it means you guys are doing a good job. A pretty good idea. Excellent. Okay. All right, good deal. Liran, Amanda, are you guys with us? And can I ask you to kind of go into that next part of the MFA, Microsoft MFA piece, and kind of the UI that you said might be interesting or challenging for people, the way it presents data?
Yes. Go ahead, Amanda.
Sorry. Yeah. So we alluded to it last week, where we'll show you the screen in a minute. I'll share my screen, but there's some information that might be confusing. So we're updating the Microsoft MFA report to kind of avoid that confusion. So let me hit share. Okay. So hopefully you can see my screen right now. It is showing you inside of Microsoft admin, specifically showing you the multi-factor authentication page, right? And so this is typically where we've seen people come and check the MFA status, right? And someone says to me, look, this is enabled or this is disabled, and your report isn't showing the exact same value. And so I have down at the bottom of this list a couple of scenarios, but we're going to look at this test MFA status for today. As you can see in this console, it's labeled as disabled. And so in this scenario, you're expecting there to be no MFA at all on this account. So what we did was we went through each of these different scenarios of where you might have MFA disabled, you might have MFA disabled, but you might have it set up as the user. You might have MFA enabled, but the user has not logged in again, so on and so forth. All these testing scenarios have been kind of gone through. They've been tested against the endpoint, which is Microsoft Graph Endpoint 11. And, we've then provided the data that comes back when you have a status that you see in the dashboard as such, but with other circumstances. So for today's demo, we wanted to look at this one, right? Scenario 2, MFA is disabled, but MFA has actually been completed by the user. So for demo purposes, for that test MFA status alerts, I'm going to log in as that user. And you can see it's going to log me in, and I haven't been prompted for anything. But if I do go to some of my properties, hold on, let me get this out of the way. If I go to some of the properties and I want to make a change on the account level to something like my MFA status or something more detailed, a password change, when this loads, and you press the update information, you're going to see that I'm actually prompted in a minute. Oh, there it goes. Prompted for the MFA. So MFA is actually turned on. The user cannot perform all actions. They must do the MFA for, something sensitive like their password and or their authentication, etc. So when you're in the Microsoft dashboard itself, the Microsoft dashboard reports that it's disabled. However, it has been enabled by the end user, and there is MFA required for certain activities for that user. And so what we want to convey is that this is a dashboard, right? This is a tool that Microsoft has created in order for you to apply a policy. So someone might say, yes, we're on board for MFA, please turn it on for all my users. You come to this window, you multi-select all the people that are applicable, and you click the enable button. They'll all immediately switch to enable. But that doesn't actually mean that MFA has been enabled until the user logs in and sets up MFA. And in this scenario, you could see, they haven't agreed, it's not even turned on, but for whatever reason, the end user has turned it on. So MFA is actually on, but it is listed as disabled. So that's where we just want to make sure everybody understands that this screen here isn't actually a report. It's a tool for you to set policy. What's going to actually give us the confirmation that MFA has truly been turned on for an account or not turned on for account is when we pull that endpoint. And so we'll publish these testing scenarios, and you'll be able to see, what does MFA really truly turned on look like in these scenarios, and knowing which one is true. So to that end, what we've done for the redesign, and this is just a mock-up so I can show you guys, but essentially it's just going to say MFA status on or off. We're not going to get into enabled, disabled, because that's a screen, like I said, to give you a tool to set policy. What we're going to truly tell you is whether MFA has been turned on or turned off. We've also included an admin column, so you'll know if a user is an admin as well. And now whenever the report loads, this is a rendering. It's not exactly true to this look and feel, but it's something similar. It's going to let you know that, if you are looking at that admin portal, that is, exactly a tool for you to set that policy, and that certain scenarios lead to MFA being turned on, even if it's not available for you to see in that dashboard. So we're publishing a knowledge base article. You'll be able to click on the link to get to the knowledge base article, and then, you'll acknowledge that you've read this box and move on to the actual report loading. So that way you're made aware of what the report is truly showing you.
Amanda, Liran, there's some comments in chat. If you were to boil this down in layman's terms, it would seem there's confusion on what is being, enabled and what is going on. Is that a fair statement? Without really digging into it.
It's a fair statement because some people are using that admin portal as an interpretation of actuality rather than a place where you're setting policy. And so when it comes down to it, if the user hasn't logged in and MFA has been turned on as a policy, MFA is not actually on for that user. And vice versa, if a user has turned it on at their individual level, MFA is actually on. It just isn't represented in that dashboard because it's not something being enforced in that.
Yeah, so Andrew, the whole reason that Amanda's gone through so much detail in this exercise and we're redesigning the screen is because we've had a number of partners since, well, actually for many months, who send in support tickets. And I don't think it's many people in this group, but nevertheless, that say, hey, the information in the SaaS Alerts MFA report doesn't match what's in Microsoft's MFA report. And what we're trying what Amanda's trying to bring forward here is that Microsoft's control panel is not a report. It does not report on the state as it is at the moment. It reports on the condition that the administrator has set, where SaaS Alerts is reporting on the state of that individual user's MFA status.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
It does. And just one more question to you, Chip, and I'm throwing a wrench in it. Please let me know. Does this, some people rely on Secure Score, look at Secure Score on, how well enabled MFA has been enforced. Does that play into this equation as well? And is that off, quote unquote? And if you don't know, that's fine. But I'm just wondering, now that there's this delta in what people think is reality, what is Microsoft? Because as you know, they're always so uniform in everything they do.
Yeah. So I imagine that when there is disparity, like for instance, if you're a user, Andrew, for some company, and since you're a security conscious guy, you've gone ahead and set up MFA on your own, and it's not been set as an administrative policy. That's probably not going to be reflected in the Secure Score. I think we'll know that more definitively when we finish what we're doing, the work that we're doing with Fortify, which is well underway to provide that Secure Score information along with other metrics that we're pulling into that Fortify component for partners. So we'll be able to give you more definitive, but I'm pretty sure that Microsoft is only going to be looking at those administrative values when pulling up the Secure Score.
Got it. Gary, Gary asks, what about a partial? Gary,
yeah, well, you talked about these, sort of in betweens. What about just showing that, that it's partially implemented versus binary on or off?
Because we can't see that from the API, Gary.
You don't see those other values?
No.
We don't.
Oh.
Go ahead, Amanda. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say, and that's kind of, we'll publish the testing scenarios, but essentially all you get back is true or false from them, even if it's only partially set up. And there's no combination.
I thought you were showing, when you showed the 4 different values, I thought those were components that you were showing, but trying to figure out how to represent that without making it complex was the issue.
No.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, we are trying to represent it without making it complex. It's just that because of the disparity between what Microsoft reports through its APIs and what they show in their own control panel, it's difficult to reconcile this out without some confusion. So we're trying to explain it, that our goal is to show this precise state at that moment for a user.
So I guess then the question then, as somebody who uses the platform for baselines and that kind of information, do you have like a PowerShell script or a query that we can run to do that deeper validation? Is that something that's moderately easy for us to do that extra validation?
I mean, we haven't been in the business so far of creating and distributing PowerShell scripts. We've got our hands kind of full with the code that we've got to deal with. I think the community at large may have some interesting notions on PowerShell. I mean, a lot of the guys on this call are PowerShell gurus.
That makes sense.
And just to add another piece to this, when I first learned that I couldn't just get a list of my users in Microsoft and just know whether or not they have MFA status, I pretty much reached out to anyone who's ever worked at MSP at SaaS Alerts, which is quite a few people, and said, hey, where do I get a list of all my users and their actual MFA status? Some people pointed me to the screen that Amanda showed, and we've since discovered that it doesn't actually show what we think. But unfortunately, I think the answer is you have to go and you have to click on each user individually to get their actual MFA status, right? And some of you guys are managing tenants with hundreds, if not more, of accounts, and that's just not something that you want to be doing if you want to answer the simple question of how many of my accounts actually have MFA turned on right now. So that's what we're hoping to answer with this MFA report.
If I could add a note here, on some of the higher level accounts for Azure, you can get a list of capable or not capable authentication things. And especially if you go through a campaign where you're registering users, again, it's not available for the cheaper Azure, but it's for the higher end. You can get a campaign started and watch all the progress of all the users registering and also see who's registered. But yeah, if you use the regular level of Azure, you have to go to each user to see if a phone number or authentication thing has been registered. It's kind of a pain. Some of our bigger accounts, though, I was able to actually run the authentication registration list, and it shows you what the current level of people registered is.
But I guess Liran and Chip, to the point being is that managing M365 at scale from a configuration perspective is daunting.
Yeah, so it certainly is. And Andrew, when we finish this topic, there is one more small topic I'd like to cover.
Sure. There was conversation between Mike, Adam, and Joshua. Do you guys just amongst yourselves, or do you have any thoughts or questions in there? I don't want to miss what you guys were chiming in chat. And if not, no worries. Okay. Go ahead, Liran. Doesn't sound like there is much that they probably were just kind of all set. Okay, perfect.
So the other topic that I wanted to cover today was last week we introduced a new event, MFA failure, due to the respond of the community here and the SaaS calls. We had one of our partners ask us, hey, can you give me an event when somebody fails an MFA challenge? We thought about it and slapped ourselves on the head and thought, well, obviously that's something we should be doing. So we released that event last week, and you guys are probably seeing MFA failure events. Now, a single MFA failure by itself isn't that big of a deal. We've all fat-fingered the 6-digit code or the text, or if that's what we're doing, we've done that before. But what is a lot more interesting is when, say, a user has 5 MFA code failures, maybe in an hour or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. So we've created a respond template that I'll ask Amanda to walk us through. Ben says MFA fatigue. That's exactly right. So we have a respond template, right? We said we'd release a respond template, and it's fully configurable. You guys can go, you can copy it, and then you can tweak it to your heart's content. Once Amanda gets logged in here, she'll show us what it looks like. If you haven't used templates, they're very easy. You just go into respond, you click on a template, you open it, see what it does. And yeah, I chuckled too when I saw that. Ben's setting it up right now. So when you see this template, you just click on it, click duplicate, it'll create the rule. You go into the rule, edit the rule as you like, turn it. And then if one of your users meets the criteria that you've defined, you can get informed, or you can just have it do nothing. So, Amanda, if you could walk us through this, please.
Yeah, sorry, I was actually clicking while you were talking. So,
Yeah.
Under respond, under rule templates, if you search for MFA, you'll find it's labeled new MFA off failure. Like Liran said, if you plan to use it, you'd want to click the duplicate button. If you want to just review it, press the view button. And so you can see here, right, by default, it's looking for the MFA authentication failure event to happen 5 times within 4 hours. It is set up to then block sign in and change the user password, approve manually, and it comes in at critical severity.
Thanks, Amanda.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that, with the combination of that low level event with this respond rule, I think it makes it really powerful. You obviously don't need to employ the automation that we put in place. But if you do see a series of MFA failures on the particular account, it is a strong suggestion that that password has been compromised, and the only thing protecting that account is MFA.
Any questions or comments on that?
Really nice, really good.
Possible to add
Nice
notes.
job.
Mike's got a question there, Chip, on respond rules. Is it possible to add notes? Do you want a use case maybe, Chip, too, to clarify where?
Yeah, Mike, can you clarify that? You mean notes, internal notes for other people? What are you thinking there? For other team members to understand the context of a rule?
Okay,
Mike's gonna get his mic.
Mike is gonna get mic'd up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
What I was thinking was just a notes field. So if somebody makes a change to something of a respond rule, we can just put a note of what it's going to do, or just something to explain a little bit more. But I guess we got the conditions field, but just internal notes for us for text or
Like a
somebody
version
else.
control, if you will.
What was that?
Like a version control, like I changed this rule from this to this, for instance.
Just a notes field, just so we can put some notes of, if we make a change to something, or the versioning or whatever. Yeah. I don't know if that's hard to add in there or not, but just a thought.
It's not easy. Let's just say that.
Of-
It requires new
Nothing's-
tables and all that jazz. I don't want to get into it, but
Nothing's ever easy, right?
yeah. Well, creating templates is easy.
Just a thought. I just thinking out loud.
Yep, no, it's a good idea. Thanks for sharing that. Andy, you have a question?
Yeah, actually taking this one step further on that suggestion, and that is, I learned and became aware of the value of putting expiration dates with on particular documents or rules that may exist, so that we could reevaluate that they're still applicable given what they were created for. So building on having a note in there, being able to have a scheduled review because a rule has reached an expiration, and hey, it's still valid, or it needs to be enhanced this way because of changes in Microsoft 365 or SaaS Alerts. That would be, I think, a tremendous value add.
So that's a very interesting idea. And I think we're partially there in the sense that when you create a respond rule, you can set an effective date for it to run. And I think, right, the addition to what you said, and that is, I guess for this to be effective in the context of what you stated, we would also need to alert you like, hey, this rule is going to expire, just letting you know.
And I'm talking about from a meta perspective, not about, hey, is it actually doing the job? It's saying, hey, look, is there enhancements made to SaaS Alerts or enhancements available in Microsoft 365 that could make this rule better? And that's really, it's looking at a rule review process.
So how does this translate to SaaS Alerts application?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so Microsoft is just adding GDAP as an example. How does that impact, or what other features has Microsoft added that would impact us? Okay, or there might be with Unify. Hey, we're now beginning to see new capabilities that didn't exist before, and how could we incorporate them into other areas of SaaS Alerts? I don't have the answer to all this yet because it's still new, but the point was, it makes sense to be able to review on a periodic basis the respond rules, the analytics that we take, and in going future, Unify, and how they might all meld together in a more cohesive manner.
Andy, when you say review, do you mean review in the context of these calls, or do you mean an active review that we're somehow building into the user interface of SaaS Alerts?
So I don't know if you guys are familiar with IT Glue, but they have this document process that says, hey, look, we had these processes in place. Are they still valid? And this is something to take a look at. Maybe it's time to review it from a perspective with a client. I'm thinking about SaaS Alerts in that Google's changing, Microsoft is changing, you're changing, how we respond to issues or threats are changing. It doesn't make sense to enhance, and so it's an internal review that says this was valid when we set it up. How might it be better enhanced, and this is really a process of refinement, and how I'm looking at it. So for example, if I said PowerShell scripts can evolve over time. And if we don't keep track of how they're being used, then they might not perform ideally any longer in the future. And I'm just trying to say, how do we deal with that kind of concept?
Yeah, I mean, I think for now, that's something that MSPs need to deal with internally through tools like IT Glue. I mean, SaaS Alerts, we've got enough on our plate. I don't think we can turn ourselves into a process management platform. We got to stay so focused on the security side of it.
And
now,
Chip,
having said that, I think, Andy, that if we were to add the ability at some time in the future, and Liran says it's not a trivial task, even though it's a trivial result, to add notes to templates, your team could get in the practice of leaving notes in the templates and building basically kind of a breadcrumb trail as they're duplicating templates and iterating them forward.
Or what about leveraging other MSP tools that would allow us to do that, i.e. an API to IT Glue, so that we could say, here's where the information is, this is what it was doing, and this now needs to come up for review, and we can push that back. So just a thought. I'm just saying, I'm really becoming keenly aware of how this process needs to make me better. Thanks for listening.
Good stuff.
We got Andy Liran on the queue. Andy, what's up, bud?
Hey, Andrew.
Just so you know, I'm not pleased with you and the folks in Toronto, but go ahead.
Hey, I'm not in Toronto.
Oh, you're not?
Nearby, but nearby,
Okay.
3 hours away. Just to sort of add to Andy's thought, it's a great thought, because as APIs change, or even as a license changes, so a particular rule may be set in place for something, and it's only applicable to the license that they currently have, which might be a business standard license, but then all of a sudden they upgrade and they're at E5 licenses. So then there's a lot more in the Graph API that can be pulled from, and so then that review of here's some other things that could be added to the rule for that particular thing. But those APIs and lots of things can change over time. So in 6 months from now, there would be a lot more to that rule that could be applied than there currently is, or maybe even have an expiration date to say, every 3 months it gets reviewed, and then if there's new things that can be added, then those things get imported in.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. In interest of time, Liran, are we good to move from this one?
Yeah, unless you guys want to talk any more about MFA, I think we can safely move on from this topic.
Yeah. Well, look, on the next piece here, I'm going to put in the URL, and Chip's going to just chat briefly about this. Chip, we're not going to have to worry about MFA anymore anyway, right?
Soon enough. That's, I've been talking about this for a while now, that, when Google, Microsoft, and Apple all agree on something, then the world is going to change, and they've all agreed on FIDO2 as a standard. It was just ironic, Andrew. I saw this article yesterday pop up on Wired. They published it yesterday, 2 days after our call on Monday, where exactly, Ben, where we really got into kind of a deep dive discussion about where this is all going. And lo and behold, Google is now pushing out to Gmail users, not Google Workspace2users. Google Workspace users actually already have access to this, the ability to set up passwordless authentication, second factor authentication for all their Gmail customers. Really easy to set up. Just plug right in. You can use a YubiKey. You can use Face ID on your phone. You can use the Touch ID on your laptop, which many of us now have some kind of biometric that can be used. So really any option that you want, they have a very simple workflow to walk through to set up the passwordless authentication approach. So you're really just putting in your username, your account name when you want to log in, and then all of the rest of the challenge is going on from that identity provider that's some kind of hardware token. So the advantage being it's a much longer token, number one, so much harder for hackers to get in the middle of and crack it. But just from a convenience standpoint, I'm sure any of you who are Mac users out there or newer Windows devices that have fingerprint ID, there's lots and lots of things that you can just log into, and all you got to do is put your finger on the button. I'm doing this over here where the camera is, and away you go. You've got no authenticator app to pick up. You're not typing in a password. You're not doing anything. I've been wondering for a long time, when they're going to get caught up with this. My banking apps, this is the way they work. I don't log into my banking apps on my phone anymore. I just look at my phone, and it's doing everything with facial recognition. It's the same kind of thing. That facial recognition pattern is a big long token that's being used to provide identity. So I think that's the future for all of us. I will say that the role of the MSP here is going to be to help navigate it for their customers. For me, for you guys, it's easy to sit there and set this up because we're used to the jargon and we know what is being asked for your everyday user. To adopt this in Gmail or in public systems, they're going to sit there and get their heads all wrapped around the axle about what's a YubiKey, and I don't understand why you need me to add a token, and what's doing this with the QR code. They get confused, but so there's a lot of help that's needed from the professionals in the space. But I think it's the long-term solution to get away from this entire discussion of MFA and all the other elements that we're talking about almost every week.
Really, really interesting. And it's obviously fascinating how we talk about the term, right? The browser or the users, now the identities, the perimeter chip. But it's really interesting how they're moving, the Googles of the world, right? Taking, you wonder, can they replace a double secret octopus where people are spending, all that kind of money in these passwordless solutions? Will they, like a Google, become the identity? Or do you think they're all trying to become the identity provider? Is it a race?
Yeah, they are. I mean, it started with the whole sign in with movement, whether it's sign in with Microsoft, sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, sign in with Apple. Everyone wants to become the identity provider. There's lots of commercial reasons for that. Obviously, you're talking Facebook and Apple. It's because they want to be sitting between you and every other service that you're signing into. They want to know what you're signing into, and they want to be able to find a way to capitalize on that from a marketing and a cash position, and being able to sell that information on. But from Microsoft and Google, and I think Microsoft especially as sort of the leader in SaaS business apps, it's obviously makes a whole lot more sense for them to reduce the friction around how people authenticate into their products. We had this discussion this morning on our weekly risk management call here at SaaS Alerts, because we've moved our engineering team over to YubiKeys, and the discussion came up this morning. What are we going to do? We're going to spend the money for YubiKey with other team members who might want to make this transition. Once they realize that it's actually a lot more convenient, yes, it takes a little bit of time to set it up. Although I'd argue, as much angst as people get about trying to figure out what password they should use when they have to change their password, this is a one-time shot and then you're done. So I think it's an overall time saver, and in the end, it's easier. So we're going to push it out to everybody, as quickly as possible in our environment that wants to switch to this kind of convenience. And I think that that's the sell. We always try and bring things back on these calls to how do you push this through to a customer. And in the end, I think the real sell is it's convenience. The security is better and it's easier and more convenient for you to use, some kind of hardware token or facial recognition or the fingerprint scanner that's already built into your computer.
Right. Really good stuff. Any comments there on this?
The ironic part about that, Chip, long before our cell phones were our multi-factor,
yeah,
this is what we used. We've had Passportal on our desktops, I don't know, probably 10 years. And this is what we started with, and I still have them in my drawer.
Yeah, it's coming full circle. I mean, I remember 15 years ago.
Does anybody want a soft token?
Oh, there you go. You got a handful of those. RSA.
Yep.
Yeah, it is. It's coming full circle for the software as a service universe. This is a problem that had already been solved. At the network layer. at the office network layer, you know, a long time ago, and I think it's coming full circle.
Well, I think the interesting part, like I brought it up for discussion at my staff meeting this morning, and I've been really on the fence. And this might, if we go back in that direction, it might push me over. But we have so many platforms that can utilize SSO, and I've always been hesitant to do so because, you know, with my 365 credentials breached, now somebody has the keys to my whole kingdom. And risk versus some of that convenience and combined management. But if you're going to move to something hardware based or a key where it's much harder for somebody to steal that key, well, that might push me over the edge to go the other way and consider it again.
Yeah, well, look, it's the classic, who you are and what you have. You have to have some kind of physical element that is proof of your identity, whether it's your face, your fingerprint, or a hardware key. You need both. But I'm just a big advocate that moving away from traditional username, password, and MFA with certainly SMS and even Authenticator, just a time saver. It's just easier to jump forward to using a hardware token. And I think in the end, it dramatically improves everybody's security and is going to reduce the workload on MSP teams for dealing with users who are having problems with IAM.
Good stuff, Chip. Really good stuff. Which is a really good segue, by the way, because these types of things, I'm just going to bring up my screen here. And by the way, I do need your involvement in this. So this does not work. Tabletop does not work without you guys. Just saying. Give me a second here. All right, so just kind of FYI, I think there's a few different types of tabletops that you can look at, right? You can look at scenario based, which we're going to look at. And then if you happen to be going to Axe 8 has an upcoming event in June where on the first day, John Strand is going to be doing a 4-hour tabletop using backdoors and breaches, which is a very tactical tabletop where you're a hands-on practitioner learning how to handle incidents. So two different kinds. Scenario-based tabletops are fantastic in that you really can get a executive group together, a customer, and pose a question or two to them. Like a simple one, by the way, is, hey, your MDR provider, which is obviously you guys in a sense, calls you in the middle of the night and says, this is going on, right? What do you do? Right. And so it really determines quickly whether they have policy, procedure, have they thought it through? And tabletops in general are interesting and important because you want to look at, is it something tactical or technical? Is it operational? Is it management? Is it affecting, right? If it's operational, is it affecting the services and business? Is it management, etc.? So let's start off with this one. I didn't want that. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think that's the one you wanted.
Yeah. I guess I left a slide in there from the previous thing. Sorry about that, everybody. Let's start off with here. All right, so here's how it starts off. You have a customer. They're called the Milner Law Firm, and you start receiving calls from their employees. Decent sized law firm. Let's just say it's one of your clients, 75, 100 employees. So one doesn't know that the other's also getting this, but a few of them call into your help desk because they're suspicious. The head managing partner is on vacation out of the country, yet they're getting emails from this person and they know that that person's, out of the country and pretty much offline. So these people start to become suspicious. One other piece of information, the Milner Law Firm that you support specializes in medical malpractice. What would you do if you received, a few of these phone calls at the help desk? Anybody?
I'd be calling the principal at our main contact at the office and start trying to put the pieces together, figure out what's going on.
Okay.
Try to get a copy of the email to check headers, make sure it's not spoofed, etc. Verify login location for the partner and make sure that they're actually out of country.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely double check for spoofing. Make sure that it's not, a nothing burger fire drill. Check headers, check sign-in logs, Azure, so on and so forth.
Good stuff. What else? So let's just say that that in this case, all looks good, and that looks like legitimate email coming from that managing partner's email address, right? And then another little piece of information here that now, by the way, is it possible that this account's compromised and it's actual spear phishing going on specifically from that account? Headers are fine, everything.
Yeah, but your comment about, the reason I talked about, we check in with the customer, for background information, and we wouldn't know that that person is traveling. Well, it depends. If the logins are local, we wouldn't know that that person is traveling and unavailable till we talk to somebody at the client.
Right. And that was the initial piece of information. They're calling in saying it's kind of weird. We're getting emails and this managing partner is out of the country on vacation. Cool.
So, Andrew, not to be completely self-serving, although I guess I really am. The first thing I used to be doing is I'd check SaaS Alerts and see if there's any logins from the account from outside the country.
That's fair. But and what I want to do, Chip, too, is let's pretend this customer doesn't have SaaS Alerts just for a moment.
Sure.
Okay, because then we can sell them SaaS Alerts. But so far that's what we have going on. And I know that this would never happen, right, Gary? That you've kind of pleaded with this law firm not to use SharePoint to move around cases, and we can only imagine what information, being in the medical malpractice field, that they're working on while they're downtown and trying to increase their billable hours, right? That would never happen to anyone, right? Right, Ben?
Typically, no.
Okay, so let's assume your information, your MSP or the MSP in here deemed that, well, the logins the logins are legitimate, the emails are legitimate, and we've confirmed with the managing director, someone's gotten a hold of the managing director, that they are indeed, again, out of the country and they have not logged in. Well, so what would you think in that case, by the way, before we go to this piece? Anybody? Well, just before we go here.
Andrew, there's good response in chat from Helen.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. I can't see it. Sorry.
She says, we would block sign in, sign out all sessions, reset password, delete social tokens, etc. If the headers showed an email that was not spoofed, we couldn't immediately get a hold of the primary contact from the customer. We have a whole process. We determine a possible account when there's a possible account security incident.
That's really good, Helen. I like that a lot. However, this is where I'm going to throw a curveball at you and bring in Ryan. Ryan, you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right, Ryan. So talk to us about what the WCSS shell attack can do and how that can be used.
Oh, you've got Chip on the phone and you want me to do that. I'd rather have Chip handle that.
Okay, sure.
So Boy, Ryan, I'm surprised you sidestepped it. Yeah, as we've seen in recent months, the WCSS shell attack allows for the harvesting of a token in a browser, and then allows that harvester, the attacker, to impersonate the account now from anywhere. So you lost control of an account because the token is free. You bypass the regular login process. It's a non-interactive login. Doesn't even challenge for username, let alone password or MFA. And you've got a hacker out there banging around in a browser, doing their thing. There's Andrew's curveball.
So now, Chip, correct me if I'm wrong, this attack gives them access to, for example, SharePoint. Is that fair?
Yeah, it gives them access to everything.
Right, all these other services. So here's good.
But wait, like same thing in chat. But once you sign out all sessions, doesn't that cookie become invalidated?
Yes, it does. That's the absolute first step you need to take, is to what we call revoke all tokens. But yes, you want to sign out all sessions. Well, I won't say what I would do next, but that would be the immediate step that I would take if you had a suspicion that there's a WCSS shell attack included in this.
Right. So now, this is right. Here's the final curveball, and Helen, good for you, and Gary, good for you for changing and logging, changing passwords, et cetera. But here's what happened during that time period that they called in and resetting that password.
Data is exfiltrated. And this is why we back up our environments with a third-party tool and don't rely on Microsoft.
Correct. However, remember, this is a medical malpractice law firm. So
what case was it one case, or was it multiple cases of data that was moved out? Was it oddly coincidental?
Well, we don't know, because we don't know exactly. Remember, think about it. This is your law, quintessential user, Gary, who always listens to everything we tell them, right? Don't move, your cases over into SharePoint, right? Well, we don't know. Is it one case? Is it 10 cases? How long has this lawyer been doing this? Right?
Yep.
So right now, right, we don't necessarily know. Is it one case, 15, 1,000? We have no idea. We just know a large amount of data was moved. So if that scenario played out, what would you do?
Come on, guys. Imagine this is your data that someone just stole.
Or your clients, more importantly, your clients.
Well,
yeah.
So obviously I would want to shut down the internet or shut down the ability to exfiltrate any further. I assume that we have that option at this point.
You got to think about business interruption, but I'm saying, yes, you do.
Okay, so I think the loss to the law firm in reputation and potential lawsuits far exceeds any temporary interruption in business.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying.
So isolation would be the first step. And the second would be, without disrupting the network, begin to discern if one can. And well, so you advise the client that this has happened. And now, do they have an existing breach attorney that they need to invoke?
Bingo.
There you go. Thank you, Chip. You nailed it, Andy. The other thing, you not only their breach attorney, but what might also you want to do as their MSP.
Well, I obviously am now at liable at this point, and so I then begin to review all my legal documents and say, how am I covered or not covered, and do I have a breach attorney?
Correct.
If I don't, I need to engage.
Yes, that's the other piece, right? And you may not, Chip, again, Andy, you may not be quote unquote liable. I wouldn't go there necessarily, but I would take that assumption, right? The assumption that I need legal representation.
Yep.
This client might have been your best friend a day ago. as soon as they invoke, now, again, it's not only breach attorney, but the first thing is going to be actually cyber insurance, and the cyber insurance is going to pick the breach attorney.
And so we're really clear, their attorney is to represent their best interest, not our relationship.
1000% correct.
Yep, that is the way that I understand that I have to deal with this stuff.
That is 1000% correct. So my question to you all is, have you spoken to a breach attorney? And do you have one? And do you have one on call, quote unquote, that would know what to do? Your breach attorney would know how you have all your MSAs in place. This isn't a pitch to go hire a breach attorney. Let's play this out. Well, do you guys have your stuff in order if this actually happened?
And the answer is no.
Which is okay, because that's the whole point of a tabletop. Gaps.
Yep.
Right.
Totally with you on that one.
And if this scenario played itself out, in a worst case scenario, right, everything's always hindsight, right? The hurricane comes through and you really wish you had hurricane insurance, right? If this played out, do you wish you had a breach attorney? Do you wish you had more tighter policies around, MFA and what your client should or shouldn't do? Who owns MFA? Right? Who owns that policy?
Yep.
So these are really cool to go through with not only your own internal company, but with your clients. It's a way to gain not only a deeper relationship at a higher level with your customers, but also figure out, again, the whole point is, do we have gaps in our process and our policies, et cetera? Chip, I threw this one in at the end here for us, and because this kind of came up in the cyber call, and I'd love for you to maybe close us out with this on, how you see Microsoft, and they talk about best practices, but pretty much the default is things go on forever. Is that fair?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that Microsoft offers in this realm. Number one, it takes some effort, and you'll have to dig up some articles, or I'll send you some articles on doing it, but you can actually set up 365 logins so that your users are not presented with the option to stay signed in. So right off the bat, that's a good practice. If you can implement that, for your customers, they're going to push back, of course, but it's a good practice.
Don't tell them.
What's that, Gary?
Don't tell them.
Don't tell them.
If they don't see the checkbox, they won't miss it.
The other element is to use a policy setting, and this is very easy to do in Google, not so easy to do again in Microsoft, to expire session tokens at regular intervals, so that they're not existing out there for more than, let's say, 12 hours or 24 hours at the max. We can debate sort of all day long, like what the right number is. For us, that number is 12 hours. For us at SaaS Alerts internally, that number is 12 hours. We expire tokens so that you're required to log back in and re-authenticate. So, in practice, I would encourage people to think about it, especially since this, the WCSS non-interactive token harvesting issue has become a bigger issue, just in the last 3 months than it ever was before.
Yeah. And again, I would look at, again, what, right, Gary, like, and Chip, like, is there policy, for a customer that might have, a regulated customer, right, that could move sensitive data, right? At least have that conversation with them, and again, documentation around it, right? Because if this is this type of attack, we know that time is of the essence, right? No longer is it, dwell time. If it's a nation state actor that's compromising, looking for intel, first of all, we're not going to, more than likely, they're going to come in a different way.
They're going to come in low and slow.
Yeah.
And you're never going to know they're there.
Right. But this is a smash and grab, either BEC or exfiltration, and these can happen really quick, right, Chip? I mean, you probably have seen it, right? In even attempts in SaaS alerts where they're trying to, or they are, like the one in China you saw. This happens quick, doesn't it?
Yeah, the most common pattern of compromise that we see is obviously it starts with the identity access management compromise where the account gets jumped. And then it quickly transitions into what we commonly refer to as a BEC, because the first thing the attacker does is they set up email forwarding. Mm-hmm. And the reason they do it is because that now is going to give them insight into customers, vendors, other partners, conversations internal to the organizations. They're going to start, they're going to sit back. If they're smart, they sit back and start picking their targets. How are we going to exfiltrate money, which is what they're really after, from this tenant. If the tenant isn't susceptible to a ransomware attack because there's no local storage that's worth really attacking, everything's in SharePoint already, then they're going to look for ways of social engineering using that compromised email account. But it's really a compromised 365 account. It's not just email. So anything that account can do, including changing permissions or getting added to groups, emailing a friend and saying, hey, I need temporary admin access because so-and-so asked me to do such and such inside the organization. All that stuff can get done now that the identity is being impersonated through the email. And don't forget, it gives them Teams logs in, it gives them Skype logins if they're using Skype as a platform, it gives them every other communication platform that's within the Microsoft universe they're in. See you, Ben.
I got to jump as well, folks. Great stuff. Thank you for the interaction. Thank you for showing up and all the great comments and chat. Chip, the team, the group's awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to see somebody else come up with another tabletop for next week.
Yeah,
one of the partners come at us with another scenario, and let's get everybody to brainstorm out together to create exercises.
Yeah, that's absolutely. If anybody wants to step up, I would love to see that, Chip. Michelle, maybe we could throw something out and see who might want to help us out with that.
Sure.
All right.
I'd love some like real life scenarios that they've been through and kind of what happened there too.
Sure. Any of those things, Ben, are great.
Awesome.
All right. Have a good week, guys. I got to jump.
See you guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.